XIII. By the late Middle Ages there were Kiplings around the River Swale, close to modern-day Richmond. The nearby village of Kipling was the original home of the Baltimores, who sailed to America to found the East Coast settlement that bears their name. Their seat, Kipling Hall, designed by Inigo Jones, dated from 1600, a little later than the first reference, in 1513, to the Kipling Coats, one of the most gruelling horse races in the world, run over 4 miles of the wind-swept Yorkshire wold. During the 18th century, the Kiplings moved across Yorkshire to farms on the bleak, wind-swept moors north of Whitby, where Rudyard's immediate ancestors were to be found in the village of Lycett. His great-grandfather, John Kipling, gravitated towards the relatively new religion of Methodism, which seemed to offer downtrodden labourers some hope of a better life, both now and in the hereafter. His sympathies wavered slightly when his son Joseph expressed a wish to become a Methodist minister. John was annoyed because this would mean the loss of an able-bodied hand on the family farm. Joseph persevered, confirming his resolve by overcoming the normal Methodist reluctance for its ministers to marry out of the religion. He'd fallen in love with Frances Lockwood, the Anglican daughter of a builder who lived slightly north of his own family in Skelton in Cleveland, on the edge of the Whitby moors. Frances's mother, Ruth, was the daughter of Peter Merry, who was a steward on Lord Mulgrave's nearby estate, had featured in David Wilkie's once well-known picture, The Rent Day, painted in 1807. Following their marriage in 1836, Joseph and Frances Kipling settled temporarily in a cottage in Pickering, where in July the following year their son John, the first of 6 surviving children, was born. Until his late 20s, this boy was known as John. Thereafter he adopted his mother's maiden name, Lockwood, which, to avoid confusion, is how he will be designated throughout this book. Usefully, for a preacher, Joseph possessed what was described as a voice of rare sweetness. His grandson Rudyard never knew him, but as a boy he sometimes stayed with his grandmother and his Yorkshire aunts, from whom he learnt enough about Joseph to portray him in his story On Greenhow Hill. Joseph appears as the preacher, the Reverend Amos Barraclough, a little white-faced chap wi' a voice as 'ud while a bird off in a bush, and a way of laying hold of folks has made them think they'd never had a live man for a friend before. 1 year older than her husband, Frances Kipling had unusual Mediterranean looks, with striking dark eyes, black hair and bushy eyebrows, a merry family trait that Rudyard was to inherit. Frances's offspring were said to alternate between Spanish brunettes and apple-blossom blondes. This gave rise to a family myth that an ancestor had been a Spaniard who was rescued from a wreck of the Armada. When he was still a few weeks short of his 8th birthday, Lockwood was sent to Woodhouse Grove Academy, 60 miles across the county at Apperley Bridge, on the River Aire, near Bradford. As a boarding establishment, run on a shoestring, it had been set up in 1812 specifically to cater for the sons of itinerant Methodist ministers. Schooling was free, but it was Spartan, and there was virtually no contact with the outside world. A contemporary, W.F. Moulton, recalled, "A newspaper seldom reached us, and the 1848 French Revolution was little more than a rumour." Beating was rife, one master prefacing his assaults on Lockwood Kipling with the words that he was only doing this out of high regard for your father. The headmaster also flogged the boy for so-called stoical apathy, a reaction hardly surprising in the circumstances. As a result, Lockwood showed scant enthusiasm for his father's religion, and no desire to follow him into the ministry. In 1851, at the age of 14, he had a magpie intelligence and obvious artistic abilities, but little idea of the direction his life might take. If, exaggerating slightly, Rudyard Kipling could lay claim of his father's family, I believe that, in a humble way, few stocks carry back cleaner Yorkshire blood for a longer time. His mother's forebears, the MacDonalds, were more hybrid. Looking back to the mighty Somerled, they had once been the most powerful clan on the west coast of Scotland, guardians of 25,000 square miles of territory.